Welcome to News Conference. Hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. With us, the Honorable Karen Bass, member of the U.S. House of Representatives from the 37th Congressional District. That's West L.A., Crenshaw, Exposition Park. Very diverse district. Should also mention you won re-election with over 80% of the vote. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we're the former Speaker of the California State Assembly. It's an honor to have you. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me on.
Listen, your party seems to be at a crossroads. You have one wing, sort of represented by Harry Reid and Elizabeth Warren, who says this new president didn't win the popular vote. We believe he was a sexual predator. We believe a lot of his voters were, people who supported him were racists. They want to oppose him at every level. Then you have Nancy Pelosi who says, hey, if there's common ground, there's common ground. Where do you side? Well,
I think it's a little too early to tell. I mean, I will have to say, though, that what I have seen him put out so far, two things. One, what he wants to do in his first 100 days, as well as his 10-point plan for the African-American community, I think is extremely troubling. But, you know, we have seen so many different Trumps. We need to see which Trump is going to take the presidency. So it's not very clear to me at all.
If he does say, listen, as he did in the campaign trail, we want to increase the federal minimum wage, I want to invest in infrastructure, those are not Republican positions.
Exactly.
Would you reach out on that?
Well, if he said he wanted to increase the minimum wage, absolutely. The whole thing about the infrastructure plan, it depends on how he plans to do it. So let me give you a couple of examples. Right now, his proposal for $1 trillion in spending, he is talking about doing it primarily through tax cuts. He's also talking about gutting environmental regulations. So I definitely want to see infrastructure, but not at the expense of going about it in the way he is initially proposing.
Let me ask you about something that you started in August.
Yes.
You started a petition.
I did.
Asking for a psychological evaluation of Donald Trump. And your tweet was, it's clear the real Donald Trump isn't mentally equipped to be POTUS, President of the United States. Sign my petition if you demand a psych evaluation. You still want that?
Let me tell you what I was trying to do then. And frankly, I was deeply concerned throughout the campaign, and I hope I changed my opinion. I certainly haven't changed it so far, that he just seemed to be so narcissistic. I mean, he still can't get rid of his Twitter. And if you can imagine a president being upset over Saturday Night Live, what is he going to do, you know, at a foreign head of state? So what I was trying to do was, I was calling on the mental health community to step up and to say something. If you have somebody that's displaying symptoms or characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder, I was very concerned about that, and I continue to be.
Should Nancy Pelosi be the House Minority Leader?
I do think Nancy Pelosi should be the House Minority Leader. A number of us, especially the women in the caucus, signed a petition before we even came back into session supporting her. Now, having said that, I do want to acknowledge that there's a lot of turmoil within the caucus, but you would expect that after such an, you know, disastrous election results as we had with the election of of Trump. I still have a hard time mixing those two. But with his election, and also we had planned to pick up many more seats than we actually did. And I think what killed us on the seats, frankly, was the Comey letter that came out a couple of weeks ahead of time, raising the specter that Secretary Clinton was going to be under investigation. And then a couple of days before the election going, never mind.
There was an op-ed piece in the New York Times recently by Mark Lila of Columbia University. It was about identity politics. Here's what he had to say. American liberalism has slipped into a kind of moral panic about racial, gender, and sexual identity that has distorted liberalism's message and prevented it from becoming a unifying force capable of governing. About the campaign, he says Hillary Clinton was at her best when she talked about foreign policy, democratic institutions, leading the way. But when she got to domestic policy, he says, she would slip into the rhetoric of diversity, calling out explicitly to African American, Latino, LGBT, and women voters at every stop. If you're going to mention groups in America, you better mention all of them. If you don't, those left out will notice and feel excluded, which, as the data shows, was exactly what happened with the white working class and those with strong religious convictions.
Well, you know, no, I don't agree. And I will tell you, to me, part of diversity and part of being inclusive is actually recognizing our differences and celebrating that. As long as you have discrimination that continues in our country, and you had a campaign, because if you're going to talk about calling people out, who came down the escalator and called out the entire Mexican population but Donald Trump? Look at what Donald Trump had to say about the African American community. So to look at Hillary Clinton, who was being inclusive by acknowledging who was in the room, I think that is a terrible mistake.
But what happened to the Obama voter, if If Obama voters in Michigan and Pennsylvania and plenty of other red states had voted for Hillary Clinton, you wouldn't be talking about a president like Donald Trump.
You know, it's actually very interesting because if you look at who voted and who didn't overall, both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump received fewer votes than Romney and Obama. So even if you look at the white vote, because one of the ways this election is being characterized is that there was a real upsurge in the white vote. But if you look at the white vote, Romney got more white voters than Trump did. So there wasn't some big surge. I do think that the campaign has to look back at what wasn't done in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and Michigan, and I definitely think that there were some problems there, but I don't believe the problems were because Secretary Clinton was trying to be inclusive by acknowledging the people that were in her audiences.
We have a minute and a half. There's been a lot of protests in Los Angeles over immigration, undocumented immigrants, saying that they're concerned. If Donald Trump, in terms of policy, said, and he actually has stated this, I want to stop undocumented immigration, seal the borders, just stop the flow of undocumented immigrants. I want to take those who are here and have been convicted of a felony or convicted or have a criminal record deported. What would be wrong with that?
Well, I think, first of all, the way he is talking about immigration is completely wrong. If you look back, you know that more people are leaving the country than coming across. If you look at why people are undocumented, there are more people that overstay legitimate reasons to come into the country. And so he, to me, is trying to be very polarizing. He is being very divisive. And I am deeply concerned about the immigration issue, especially the DACA young people who signed up, who came out in the public, and now everybody knows who they are, and I'm very concerned that he would deport people. The whole notion of people with felonies, I mean, I would think that the majority of those people are already incarcerated, and then how are you going to find them? How are you going to find these people? So, you know, to me, his calls around immigration, I think, are very divisive, and I'm very proud of our city, Los Angeles, where our city council stood up and said, we're not going to go along with these proposals if he plans to move forward with them.
Finally, what is on your agenda for the next session?
Well, what's on my agenda for the next session is definitely going to be moving forward with criminal justice reform, which is something that we started in a bipartisan manner. I continue to work on child welfare, and I continue to promote trade with the continent of Africa. In addition to that, there's issues of piracy and copyright because I serve on the Judiciary Committee for Intellectual Properties.
May you live in interesting times.
Don't we all?
The Honorable Karen Bass, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Up next.